Hello, and welcome to the chapter. I'm not sure what chapter this is, but it is the title of Five Things Easier to Do Than Simeon's and Kenzie's Secret Handshake. That's the title of this chapter. It starts on page 97, and I will be reading to page 107 since that is your assignment for tonight. All right, so since the title is Five Things Easier to Do Than Simeon's and Kenzie's Secret Handshake, is a list. So the first one is number one of the five things that's easier to do than the secret handshake. The number one thing is getting through the crowded hallway after the bell rings. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. It's pretty hard to get through the hallway after the bell rings, right? So the handshake must be pretty complicated. Here we go. Simeon Cross was big for his age. Big, like two kids tall and two kids wide. A walking anvil with a happy, gappy smile that lit every doorway he darkened. Impossible to miss when he was around, and impossible not to miss when he was absent. So, when the bell rang, Simeon got up from his desk in Mr. DeVanzo's class, grabbed his backpack off the floor, and waited by the door while all his classmates filed out, jumping up to give him high fives. Everybody but Ty Carson, who bolted out of class, probably because Mr. DeVanzo couldn't stand people asking to go to the bathroom. There's no time for breaks when it comes to understanding the world around you, he'd say. After everyone else had gone, Simeon walked over to Mr. DeVanzo, and they slapped the backs of their hands together, knuckles knocking like tiny pool balls. Their secret handshake, which was nothing elementary compared to the complex system he and Kenzie had. Kenzie Thompson was small for his age, tied for the smallest kid in his class with another boy everybody called Bit. Kenzie didn't have a nickname like that, and if anyone ever tried to give him one, he would do nothing. Well, that's not true. He would do something, but that something would be telling Simeon. And then Simeon would do nothing. Because when you're Simeon size, a look is more than enough. Kenzie's name, though only 5 letters, was longer than he was. But other than his smallness and the fact that he carried a blue bouncy ball everywhere he went, there was really nothing else about him that stood out. He wasn't particularly tough or loud or funny or sad or weird or even smelly. Just Kenzie. Maybe he'd speak in class. Maybe he wouldn't. Got good grades when he studied, bad grades when he didn't. Wasn't dripping in name brands, but always clean. And was friends with everyone, but really friends with no one but Simeon. And Simeon was friends with everyone because being his enemy just wasn't smart. Kenzie walked the middle of every line until the bell rang, and then something else. Kenzie never rushed out of Mr. Fantana's class like the rest of the students. Not because he had some kind of special love for life science. I mean, it was okay. But because he knew he'd never make it to his locker with the hundreds of other kids traffic jamming and bumper carring around, not paying attention to the fact that their elbows were right by his face. He'd been hit before, several times, had his eyes swollen accidentally by girls who swung their arms around to make sure their friends understood the importance of whatever they were saying, had his lip busted because some boys pretending it was 5 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Curry with the ball, he shoots, he scores, and he punches a kid in the face while hitting his crossover. That kid, Kenzie. For him, the hallway was a minefield, and there were hundreds of active minds dressed in t-shirts and jeans. So he waited while Mr. Fantana gathered his lesson plans, but put the tops back on his dry erase markers. Waited and waited for yo! Simeon came bursting into Mr. Fantana's room. Fantana banana, what's good? What's hood? What's new? What's true? Simeon gave Mr. Fantana an awkward handshake that looked like Mr. Fantana was trying to figure out how hands worked. Took you forever, bro, Kenzie said, getting up from his desk. My bad, man, Simeon said, reaching out for Kenzie's hand. Don't! Mr. Fantana sparked up. Don't do that handshake in here. Not because I think anything is wrong with it. It's just, I really want to get going, guys, and that handshake y'all do takes way too long. I know you probably won't believe this, but teachers have lives too. Mr. Fantana smirked, then went on shoving papers into his leather bag. Wow, Mr. Fantana, I thought you were all about life science. What we were getting ready to show you was life science in full effect, Simeon explained. I am, and I love y'all, but not today. Then he pointed at the door. Please. Simeon didn't argue. He just turned back to Kenzie. Come on, Kenzie. I don't want to be nowhere we ain't welcomed. Simeon, cut it. Mr. Fantana started, but Simeon shut him down. Nope. You said what you said, and the damage is done. Simeon bent his knees, squatting just enough for Kenzie to get a running start, to jump onto his back. And off they went, out into the busy hallway of stumbling, awkward bodies, pinballing around, bouncing into one another, and off lockers. Simeon, bigger than the rest, was unbounceable. He couldn't be knocked down or pushed out of the way. Ready? Simeon asked Kenzie over his shoulder. Kenzie had his arms wrapped around Simeon's neck, tight enough to hold on, but not tight enough to choke him. Let's do it, Kenzie called back, and off they went. Okay, here's number 2 of what is easier than the handshake Kenzie and Simeon do. So the second thing that's easier is getting out of trouble with Ms. Walkley for pretending to be in a horse race. So here we go. But Ms. Walkley, we're not pretending to be in a horse race, Simeon pleaded. Miss Walkley stood at the door to the school, her face a pink raisin, made raisinier whenever she was in discipline mode, which was all the time. It was pretty much her job to tell everyone what not to do. Stop making farting noise. Stop dancing. Stop dancing like that. Stop rapping. Stop singing. Stop laughing. Stop acting like children. Mr. Cross, Mr. Thompson was just on your back yelling, "Yee-haw," while circling his arm in the air as if winding an imaginary lasso, Miss Walkley demonstrated, and it took everything in both boys to not crack up. That's just how he talks, Simeon said. I'm going to say this to you for the 1,000th time, Miss Walkley steamed. All feet should be and stay firmly on the ground. But what about Pia Foster? Her feet be on a skateboard. This from Kenzie. It wasn't snitching because everybody knew Pia skated through school. The one time anyone had ever seen Simeon hurt was when Pia skated over his foot. And I've told her not to do that. But we're not talking about Miss Foster, are we? No, we're talking about you two. Miss Walkley folded her arms. I've given you so many warnings, and you don't seem to take me seriously, so... Wait. Before you write us up, I think it's important that we at least let you know why we do it. Miss Walkley sighed. She'd heard their excuse. Different versions of it, time and time again. But they were always so entertaining that she was game to hear it once more. See, here's the thing, Walkley Broccoli. Can I call you that? Simeon asked. No. Got it. Here's the thing. Kenzie here got a big heart, but that big heart happens to be in a small body. Now, I don't know about you, but I would hate for that heart to be broken because that body was knocked around. That would be a tragedy. Travesty, Kenzie corrected him. Travesty, Simeon repeated. And so, because I love Kenzie, I protect him. I make sure he can maneuver down these busy hallways without worrying about anything. I'm basically his bodyguard. Tell me something, Mr. Cross. How exactly does Mr. Thompson get from class to class during the day when he's not with you? Simeon knew this was a setup. I know where you're going with this, and I don't know because I'm not with him, Miss Walkley, but I can only imagine how scary it must be. Simeon put his arm around Kenzie. Kenzie turned his face into a puppy's. Is that true, Mr. Thompson, that the hallways are scary for you? Oh, Miss Walkley, you got no idea. Just the other day, Joey Santiago didn't see me standing behind him and just backed me into my locker. like backed him all the way into it, as in his whole body was in. I understand what he's saying, Mr. Cross. He has a mouth. Exactly, he does have a mouth. Simeon is right there with her. He also has arms and legs, feet and hands, and in the same way you don't want him silenced, you also don't want him invisible, do you? Yeah, you don't want me invisible, do you, Miss Walkley? Miss Walkley's tight face was still tight, but a little less tight than it was when Kenzie and Simeon had gotten caught, pulled over by her. If I could just make one more point, Miss Walkley. She cut Simeon off. You can't. Please just go home and come back tomorrow ready to follow the rules. Miss Walkley marched off, the sound of her chunky heels clacking loudly. She turned and added, when you two grow up, I really hope you become more than a horse and jockey, because people lose a lot of money betting on horse races. Not if they bet on us, Simeon zapped right back at her. Plus, I want to be a lawyer, Kenzie said, trying to control the sting in his throat, because they're smart and they know stuff like jockeys don't say yee-haw, cowboys do. All right, here we are, number 3. This is the third reason why their handshake is harder than something. So getting to the neighborhood is easier than the handshake. That's number 3. Outside was what outside always was, a spill out of inside. It was like the main hallway was the river that led into the ocean of backpacks, ball caps, and braids. Energy and engines roaring. The roar of school is finally over. Yo, you got old Waka Waka out of here with that cowboy line. Plus, I ain't no horse. I'm a friend. Your brother, Simeon said to Kenzie as they walked up to the corner. Miss Post, the crossing guard, was standing there with her arms out. Hey, boys, she said. Kenzie leaned in for a hug. Hey, Miss Post. That hug happened every day between Kenzie and the crossing guard. A walking ritual. Staying out of trouble? She asked. Of course, Simeon said. Matter of fact, I'm going home to do my homework because we have homework. Not sure Canton Hayer told you this or not, but there's homework. Canton was Miss Post's son. He was sitting leaning against the stop sign on the corner waiting for her like he did every day. Canton just shook his head, paying the big guy no mind because everyone was used to him being silly. And what about you, little man? Miss Post addressed Kenzie, staying up out the streets. Trying, Kenzie followed, holding the blue ball up as if she could look into it and see the day's behavior. What about you? Simeon now asked Miss Post, who had put a hand up to signal for other walkers to hold tight on the corner and wait for her whistle. Best I can, she replied, popping the silver tweeter in her mouth and stepping back off the curb. Catch you tomorrow, Miss Post, Kenzie said. Oops, all right, hold on. Waving as he and Simeon turned right. Most walkers walked to the left down Portal Avenue towards some of the other neighborhoods, but to the right up Portal Avenue is where Chestnut homes were, where Simeon and Kenzie lived. It took no time because there were very few of their classmates going that way, and the ones who actually lived there didn't walk there. So the path was clear, laid out for Simeon the Grand and Kenzie the Great, like a runway to their kingdom. A kingdom where carrying a person on your back was allowed, encouraged even. A kingdom where kings are throned and dethroned daily, where the crown jewels get dropped down sewers and flushed down toilets. A kingdom full of princes like Kenzie and Simeon, princes no one ever bet on anyway. Anyway, like I was saying, we family. Simeon nailed down what he was going on about before they stopped to talk to Miss Post. Exactly. You my brother, Kenzie confirmed, bouncing the blue ball as they approached Chestnut Street. The way Kenzie and Simeon thought about it, Chestnut Street is a paradise. Light poles are like palm trees, but bus stops, benches like hammocks, and corner stores like island bungalows. There's a smell in the air, a mix of exhaust and exhaustion, also cooked food and cooked hair. There's a feel in the air, a stickiness like walking through an invisible syrup, a thickness to life. There's a sound in the air, a shrill and chill, the scream and whisper of the world making a symphony of so good and so what. Also the sound of Kenzie and Simeon, their voices still young, still sweet like flutes cutting through. Most people tighten up when they walk down Chestnut, tuck tails and tuck chins, But for Kenzo and Simeon, this was where they could get let loose, where they could run and slap the street signs, pretend to dunk, where they could stand on the blue mailboxes like pedestals, or see who could balance the longest on the tip top of a fire hydrant, where they could open random doors of random shops and speak to the owners. Mrs. Wilson's beauty shop supply store. Tell your mama I got new wigs. Or Mr. Chase's hardware store. Your daddy get that sink to stop leaking yet? Or Sue, who owned the Chinese restaurant and was always too busy to speak to them. But nowhere was better than Freddo's. All right, we're going to stop there. That's on page 107. And we'll pick it up there tomorrow with the rest of it.